I've heard a lot of discussion about how expensive model car building can be. It seems like the cost of a model kit just keeps going up. I'll admit, I try not to consider the financial cost of building a model because of the enjoyment I experience from the process of creating them. Occasionally I get asked, how much does it cost to build one of my creations? And I often can't give a fair answer. I certainly don't want to consider what it might cost to duplicate one, which got me thinking. What could be the lowest cost brand new model car anyone could build? I'd recently picked up this Revell 1966 Malibu on clearance at Hobby Lobby for a whopping $8.25. At that price, it seemed like a great start. I've seen other models available at Ollie's discount stores for $12.99. And it's worth mentioning, if you go to a show swap meet, there are often many great deals to be had. Finding a cheap kit to start with is just the beginning. The ultimate cost of building this model will require some planning and some fine print. But I plan to include the cost of the paint, detail supplies, and even some aftermarket doodads. Let's head to the bench and get started. In order to build the model, you need to have at least a bench and a clean working area. I recommend that. You're also going to need some tools. Bare minimum, you're going to need one of these. And if you don't have one of these in the drawer, I don't know how you got through life. I use mine all the time. As you can tell, it's got a lot of wear on it. It's even splitting. It might have to be replaced. It's got super glue and all kind of stuff on it, but you're gonna have to have good old hobby knife. Next up, it is preferable to have some tweezers because models have small parts. So we're gonna just put that in the kind of mandatory. Next up, you're gonna have to have some sandpaper. And as you can see, this is pretty well worn. This tastes like probably 320 grit. And because you're gonna be doing some sanding on the model. Some other sandpaper. This is finer. This tastes about like 600 grit. You're gonna need some of this to take out the scratches left behind from that. That's kind of how you do it. Finer, coarser sandpaper, finer sandpaper. That's how that works. Now for some luxuries. This a sanding stick. This one is multi-flavored that you get probably some 800, 600, maybe 300. I don't know. That's probably 280 flavored. This might be 400 flavor. You don't have numbers on them. You just go in order. And this keeps parts flat and helps the sanding process. And it's pretty too. Looks like ice cream. Not really. Another luxury I highly recommend is sprue cutters. These are the Zuron kind. Pay a little bit more for these. They're lifetime warranty. If something goes wrong, they get dull, they'll replace them for you. This will make your project go a lot easier. It'll give you an easy, clean cut on your parts. I highly recommend these. Another luxury is a FlexiFile. Why is it FlexiFile? Because it has this flexi sandpaper on it. And this will allow you to sand rounded edge things without flattening them out. And highly valuable tool, should be in your toolbox. So part of the fine print is we're not going to factor in cost of tools because this is an investment in your hobby and these will allow you to build mini models. Next up, adhesives. This is my plastic cement of choice. Faller, super expert. And as you can see, the label has been worn from years of use. I've had this bottle and it's still got plenty left in there. And I've built all kinds of models. It has the syringe, needle for nice application, precise application, and you gotta have that to do this. I also like cheap super glue in the small tubes. Why? These are cheaper. You get the bigger bottles, they're gonna get clogged, they're gonna get gummy, and I like the liquid type. I'm not a fan of gel types. They just kind of make a mess. And I basically just put this on a pallet and apply with a needle or small, a bigger needle, pieces of wire, anything that's putting the glue just where I want the glue. And I also like this Tamiya extra thin cement. This is sort of a luxury, and as you can see, it is retails for $5.99, and I still got a half a bottle, and I've had this for years, at least 4. And much like the tools, I'm not going to factor in adhesives. So let's actually get building.
I started the prep of this project during the local club hobby shop group build, which is always a good time.
So back at the bench, here's what I did at the hobby shop. I pre-assembled some of the engine, put the engine block halves together, added the cylinder heads, and then I sanded out the seam that's in between the two. And it's kind of a sign of quality modeling. And I might even clean up some of this edge so it fits, so I know it fits well to the front plate and the bell housing. We'll see. We're still testing on that. I also assembled the intake manifold. It has a separate piece here. And when I put this together, that was how I aligned the cylinder heads. So that will all fit nice and tight together. I also did the transmission. It's 2 pieces. And again, this is all just assembled with the Faller plastic cement, and then maybe a little bit of the Tamiya thin set to fill the gap, and then sand it out. I also sanded all the seams off the axle and added the springs. This will be a strong unit that the springs aren't going to fall off of it. I'm not going to try to break them off, but since it's plastic to plastic, that creates a nice melted bond between the two from using the cement. And then I've test fitted it to the chassis, knowing that that's going to go where it needs to go and the wheels are going to be centered. I also did the pre-assembly on the seats. They're 2 pieces, they have a back, and they fit together pretty good. These real seats actually had a gap or some kind of edge between the plastic back and the upholstery. I tried to keep that, and again, glued with the plastic cement. As alluded to at the hobby shop, I also test fitted this whole front end assembly. This is not typical model or how a model car goes together, because you have this separate firewall that then attaches to the body, which allows the front end to do flip nose things, and it basically snaps together with once you get the axle in, because I test fitted that, and you can see how all of this just will come apart, which is kind of nice to know that I've done the pre-assembly and I've cleaned the seams off of this. I had some fine injector pin marks in some of these areas, and I spent some time to clean that up. It's just a sign of good modeling. It's not really contest modeling. It's just, paying attention to your work because, these pin marks aren't very attractive and it'll just make your model look so much better. Speaking of pin marks, it has 4 across the package tray, and you're going to see those through the back window. And so all of that got sanded out. Still a couple down in here. I think I'm going to leave those because they're not going to be as glaring. And I don't know, I might even come up with a plan to cover those up. On the headers, I did something else here. So after cleaning up the mold line and edges on these pipes, using the flexi-file, you could use your sandpaper, but the flexi-file works so much better. I put a little piece of beading wire back behind here. And then I had to drill a hole. So we had to introduce another tool. Again, tools don't count. But what this will allow is for these to pre-assemble, and they're going to be nice and tight and they're going to be aligned. And I believe I can fish these up into the engine compartment basically assembled. We'll see. But I know that, they're going to go together now. Same thing with that one. Let's get these things out of here. I wanted to do a little bit of extra detail. And so what I've done is marked the spark plug wire holes in relation to where the headers are going to go. So you kind of got to have a little bit of planning at this point in time. So I've marked the holes, and to drill the holes, I'm going to first use the dead center from Scale Pro Shop, and it looks like this. What this is a little hardened pinpoint that when you get it right on the dot, you just kind of press it in. It's very sharp. You just kind of work it back and forth. And what this is doing is adding a little depression. So when you come in with your drill bit and drill, it's not going to slip. So let's drill some holes and then we'll be ready to paint. And then just go all the way in. And now you got 4 nice holes to put your wires in that when you assemble the header, they're not going to be in the way. With the body, I removed the emblems. These are molded on, and the main reason is there's decals for these. And I've seen people try to align the decal over the engraved one, and in my opinion, that just doesn't look good. So whether or not I put the decals for the emblems on, see how I feel. It also has a mold line that is kind of tough to get right here in this edge, and it runs across the top of the quarter panel line and all the way across the back here. And you don't really notice it unless you look at it real close, especially with magnification. And so all of that got cleaned up, and I've also scribed the door lines deeper. I just used the hobby knife to make them a little bit deeper, and so if the paint gets a little bit thicker than I want, we'll still have door lines, because that's not real good when you fill your door lines up, and these were pretty faint anyway. And that's basically all I've done with this.
Perhaps the most problematic part of this model is the separate hood scoop. This part does not fit very well and leaves some gaps to fill. I chose to use my filler of choice, which is USC Pronto Combi Spot Putty. I used the minimum, which is basically what fit on the tip of a toothpick. The seam was then covered with the least amount of brushed on Tamiya primer I could apply. I'm going to consider these two items part of the tool category, since the actual amount of each was incredibly small. And this could be considered optional if you decide to use the other scoop design in the kit.
So here's the sanded hood. I would prefer to put a coat of sanded primer on here just to be safe, but I think with the paint I'm going to be using, I'm going to be all right. I'm going to roll the dice on that just to see. And when I look at it real close, it's nice and smooth. It's been sanded back out with a minimum of 800 grit sandpaper. So all of this is smooth. And you notice I didn't put the snorkel on it. I think I have a plan for that. I wasn't real crazy about that snorkel. And this might allow me to see the air cleaners, which could be cool.
This seems like a good stopping point, and I only have some fine print and $8.25 invested into this model so far. I'm going to make up for it in the next installment and attempt to use some of the cheapest spray paint commonly available. Wish me luck. And as always, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, you know what to do, because I have all kinds of model car stories to tell. Thanks for watching.